This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, let's get this show.
No invocation.
Okay, it's 6:30 and I'll call this town council meeting to order. First thing on the agenda will be the invocation, and that will be by John Schaefer from the Discovery Church.
Thank you. Good talking there, kind of just. All right, yeah, let us pray. Father God, first of all, Lord, we just lift up Councilman Holder to you, Lord, and we ask you to give him comfort and healing, Lord, as he works through these injuries, Lord. We just really lift him up to you right now. God, thank you for this council. Thank you for these citizens in the town and for those in the room that serve this town, God. We thank you for all of them, and we ask you and your Holy Spirit to guide and lead this meeting tonight. In the name of Jesus, amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, the next thing I'll entertain is motions relating to the agenda. Do we have any motions relating to the agenda? All right, moving right along, the next thing is the minutes approval, and these are the minutes of May 22nd, 2023 for the regular meeting, and June 1st, 2023 for the special meeting.
Mr. Mayor, make a motion that we accept the meeting minutes as presented for May 23rd and June 1st.
Second.
Is there any discussion before we vote on it? Sherry?
Mr. Drake,
Yes.
Mr. Holder,
Yes.
Mrs. Keating,
Yes.
Mr. Kinkin, Mr. Football,
Yes.
Mr. Stamey,
Yes.
Mayor Hellier.
Yes. Just to let everybody know, Mr. Kinkin is not here because he has his granddaughter's graduation in North Carolina tonight, so he did that this afternoon and couldn't get back in time for the meeting, so we're gonna do our best and we miss him. All right, the next thing will be public comments, and these are public comments. Each speaker is limited to 5 minutes, and it has to be about agenda items only. Are there any public comments? Okay. There is nothing under the communications. Oh, yes, there is the administrator's report from the town administrator and also Chief Clement.
Yes, sir. Mr. Mayor, members of council, good evening. Just 3 items to communicate. On June 6th, survey documents regarding the space needs analysis from Creech and Associates has been sent via email to Town Hall and the police employees with instructions on how to complete and upload these documents. These documents will be distributed to each department director, with surveys to be completed by Wednesday, June 21st for their review and prior to their on-site visit. For town council and department directors, Creech and Associates have scheduled June the 23rd. They blocked out for an on-site interviews between 9 and 4 p.m. and also with an option of 1 to 5 p.m. on Thursday if necessary. So town council is included with the on-site interviews to receive your input. Just several items as far as meetings that were held or scheduled and attended to last week. Myrtle Beach Chamber of Commerce meeting, attended a Rotary event to announce the firefighter and police officer of the year awards. Met with Stewart Incorporated, which is our consultants for the 10-year comprehensive plan. Also met with Pivot Parking. There was a peer on-site visit with council members last week. I've got scheduled. Senator Scott's office is coming to meet with me next week. Met with Beach Services Incorporated and also attended a meeting with Horry County to discuss the RIDE 4 Advisory Committee recommended projects. And I've got that list attached to this document, and also met with the peer committee. And also just wanted to communicate that I will be attending the South Carolina City County Managers summer conference, which is this week in Myrtle Beach.
Mr. Clemens, do you have anything to add on it?
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor and Council. Mr. Vincent asked me to just give a quick update on the pier. So obviously, I think most of our citizens have seen the announcement about Perry's Bait and Tackle going to lease one of the spaces. So that has been signed, and we've been pushing that on social media and had a lot of media coverage on that. So everybody's very excited for Craig and all of the owners of Perry's Bait and Tackle to have a tackle shop on the pier. I also worked with Sherry and Mr. Vincent today. We did get the RFP posted for the last available space that is on the pier. That is open until July the 14th at 3 p.m. So we have had some interest in that space, and I'll be reaching out to some of those folks that have expressed some interest to let them know that the RFP is out. Consensus and all of the stakeholders continue to work on the pier and finishing up some items such as installation of the deck boards. Most of the deck boards are in, and now they're just going in and fixing a few and making sure that they're secured to the pier. They're continuing the final remover of the sheet piling pieces. If you've looked at the pier, you'll see that the trestle's been down for quite a while. And basically, I call it the box. I know that's not the right term, but there you go, the coffer dam. It is, I think it was gone as of today. So they're going to have trucks on site tomorrow, and they should start to carry that material away from the pier site. They've also completed the panel connection and plug installations at the end of the pier. There's still quite a bit of work that's going on in the buildings and the podium. The returns for plumbing have been completed. The partitions installed in the bathrooms. If you've been by the pier, you see the light poles have been installed. The electricians and the HVAC mechanics are continuing to work on the tie-ins for all of those. And the standpipe and the pipe running out to the end of the pier for the fire protection system has all passed the pressure test, and there's more tests to follow. So those little things like partitions in the bathrooms and all of that take a lot of time, all of that is happening. The interior stairs are being installed. Consensus is working with the architect and the engineer to finalize the shop drawings for the monumental stairs and the ramp handrails, excuse me. They have started fabrication on those handrails, but they can't install until some of the connection details are approved. So there's work that's still continuing with that. We're very close to completion with those shop drawings and getting all of that approved to hopefully start to see some installation take place. John Adair has met with Consensus on the parking lot details in the parking lot, and that construction will be moving forward. And I'm sure John will have more details on that as he continues to move with that. All the stakeholders on the pier are working very hard. We know that our community and our visitors want the pier to be completed. We are still looking at a substantial completion date of August the 8th, but the intent and the belief is that the pier will be done before then. Hopefully to get the town will get the CO. So everybody's working extremely hard. So we are still looking at that date. To change gears just for a second, I asked Mr. Vincent for a little bit of latitude and some permission to mention something about the fire department. And as you all know, back in February, we started our advanced life support initiative in the fire department here in the town of Surfside Beach, which was a really big deal for a department of our size and with two people assigned per shift. But it was something that was the right thing to do, and I just want to thank council for supporting that initiative because there wasn't cost involved with that. So I want to read something to you that Captain Kelly sent me because I find this to be the reason why we did this. On May the 25th, 2023, B Shift responded to a cardiac arrest at a resident within the town limits of Surfside Beach. Captain Josh Newton and engineer firefighter 2 Casey Crooks, would you guys throw your hands up? These two gentlemen right here were on duty. They responded with Horry County Fire and Rescue units from Station 20, and that is our automatic aid response. Once on the scene, they found the patient in cardiac arrest, and the family was performing CPR. They took over CPR and began providing life support. Basic 20 arrived and placed an automatic CPR device on the patient. This allowed Captain Newton, who is an ALS provider, to place a breathing tube, basically intubate the patient. Shortly after he intubated the patient was found to have a pulse. The paramedic from Station 20 arrived and advanced life support was continued throughout their transport. These advanced skills that Josh did were done before a paramedic unit and advanced life support provider got on the scene. The patient was recognized to have a blockage in the heart, was taken to a specialist at the hospital. The patient was treated in the hospital and was discharged on June the 8th. So that patient is back home with their family on their way to recovery. So there's many people and actions that played a part in this person being alive today. Many times the outcomes are not as favorable as this one, but the ability for someone to have critical life-saving care in a very timely manner was no doubt a large contributing factor and the reason why this person is alive today. The chain of survival worked, and we were part of that with early CPR and early ALS intervention. We've made a commitment to be the difference, and through this incident, we have demonstrated the ability to be the difference. So that is a big deal. And we appreciate it. And I know as fire chief, we continue to work to start new initiatives within the fire department. And this is an initiative. This will not be the last life that is saved or a difference is made because of that ALS care that we can now do on Rescue Engine 56. So, Mr. Vincent, thank you for that.
Thank you. All right, the next thing is a discussion, and it's a discussion about the ability to allow town council to attend meetings via telephone or electronic audio. Now, I put this on the agenda for discussion. We're not going to vote on it today, but it's something that we want to talk about in case we have a council member who is hurt or disabled and cannot come to a meeting, as Mr. Holder is now. And, you know, we have had this in the past, and we've had this discussion in the past, and council has said absolutely not. We don't want anybody being able to vote by telephone. We don't want to, you know, if they want to vote, they need to be here in person. But at the time we discussed it was a couple of years ago. And a couple of years ago when we discussed it, we didn't have the system that we have now where we're live. We can't see who's on the other end of the line. We didn't have all that at the time we did it. So I'm just bringing it back up for discussion. It's not for a blanket policy to do it. It's an emergency order in case we have somebody who has a disability that can't come to the meetings for a temporary time. So with that, I'll open the floor for discussion and we'll see what everybody has to say about it. Mr. Standing.
Mr. Mayor, my thoughts on this is I think it's a good idea. I really do. But we had this problem a couple of years ago, and this council pushed really hard to nobody to vote unless there's here, absentee vote. And as right now, until we get the whole council back and we discuss this a little bit more, I think this is a non-item that we should discuss at this time. I think we ought to stay where we're at right now until we can have maybe a workshop on it and talk about it amongst ourselves and see where every council person stands on that. Because as you know, and several of the other council people know, not many years ago, we had a problem with one council person who was calling in, and several people on this council did not want this person to be voting. And that's why this was all changed. I have a problem of changing it to suit certain people's benefits, and it seems to be that way. So like I said, I'd like to put it off and have a full discussion on our own.
Okay, that's fine. Mr. Holder.
Well, I feel strongly about this, and that's, yeah, I can't move forward.
That's okay.
But I have not known what's going to happen to me for a few weeks until I found out yesterday I'm not going to have to have surgery. So that's good. Then I will be able to have meetings. But I didn't want to miss meetings and be involved if I could. Because when you're home, there's not a lot to do when you're like this. No use going. But, and I feel like I still understand. I talked to the mayor, I talked to different people here to keep up with exactly what's going on. So I think I can be involved and I don't want to be sidelined because of an accident. So, thank you.
Okay, Ms. Keating.
Yeah, several years ago when COVID pandemic hit, council got together and suspended this ordinance to allow the business of the town to continue. And at the conclusion, when we were able to get back to face-to-face meetings, the council at the time, was considering whether that should continue with the the improvements we saw in live streaming and so forth. And at that time, Mr. Stamey's derogatory comments aside, it was heard that when council allowed remote voting, we would hear others in the background coaching that member on how to vote. And that is a serious infraction of our oath of duty to the residents of this town. So I think it's a very slippery slope to start allowing, voting to happen without having some face-to-face presence at the meetings. Now, it also becomes who decides what's the valid reasoning to have remote participation. How sick do you have to be? If, I think of my situation a year ago, where I went for a week to my son's house, had every intention of coming back, only to discover my sister had a massive stroke and was on her deathbed. So I didn't make it back for a meeting. Should I have been allowed to call in and vote? I don't know, is that a reason? So it gets to be very subjective. And I just don't think it's a wise practice, especially when you look at, for lack of a better word, the drama that surrounds the operations of this town. We've got far enough divide and rumors and innuendos and blanket lies out there about what goes on in this town as it is. I don't think we need any more illusions of something potentially underhanded going on. So I would not support setting aside this ordinance at this time.
All right, Mr. Kreckler.
I agree with probably on everything that Ms. Keating said. I'm against it. If you're sick and you have to be home, you have more important things to do than worry about town business. If there's a quorum, business can still be taken care of. Yes, you may want to be there. If you really want to be there and let's say you're quarantined, well, I guess you probably are not going to like the outcome, but that's just the way I believe it should be. If you sign up to do this, you should be able to show up. And like Ms. Keating says, it's a slippery slope. Who decides what is qualifying? Is it the council? And that shouldn't be. And if you can't write down every possibility, so it's just easier to say no. And as far as being prompted, that could happen very easily. Yeah, you might be able to hear them, but they could use flashcards and be saying what they should be saying off the screen. And it may look like they're reading them, but you can't prove it. So, and I don't think that would happen. I'm just using that as an example, but no, I would not be for it.
Okay, Mr. Drake.
I don't think it's something we need to go into with doing that. Basically, what the other two council members said. I've been under the weather the last 3 days anyway, but I'm here. And I think it's a very good thing that I need to be here for this. But if somebody has a medical issue where they can't be here, but it's only 2 weeks, every 2 weeks, Mr. Holder made it in here today, and I applaud him for that, because he thinks his vote is very well needs to be heard. But we've been through it before with COVID. That was a fiasco. And then the stuff that we saw during COVID was absolutely a fiasco. So I don't want to see us go back that route. I think you took a job and you show up to vote.
Okay, well, I brought this and put it on the agenda because I wanted everybody to know how everybody felt about it. Personally, I think that if you have somebody under certain circumstances, that you'd be able to have a special meeting and council would be able to decide whether it should happen or not. I'm not looking, like I said, I wasn't looking to change the whole ordinance to allow anybody to be able to do that on a regular basis. It's on an emergency basis, and somebody has a medical condition or somebody does not have the ability to come to a meeting. And luckily with Mr. Holder, his wife has stepped up and done a whole lot and made sure that he gets here. The fire department has stepped up by getting him a chair that they had at their lounge and bringing it over here. And I mean, we have done everything that we can to accommodate him. But after hearing what everybody on council has to say, then I will end the discussion right there, and perhaps we'll bring it up at a later date. But as for right now, I'm going to go ahead and drop it. Thank you. And the next thing is the business section, which is the second reading of ordinance 230956, an ordinance of the town of Surfside to adopt the 2023-24 fiscal year municipal budget and to set the millage rate for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2024.
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor and council. Just to give some background, the budget process started back in December with staff. There has been a number of meetings between the interim town manager and his department directors for a couple months before the workshops were set with town council in March and April. On May the 23rd, the first reading of the budget was presented to the board, but was continued until June the 1st. On June the 1st, just want to recap what was proposed to council. 3 full-time firefighters, 1 full-time administration, human resource risk management position, 1 full-time public works employee, 1 part-time court employee, cost of living adjustment 5% for qualifying employees, and professional service $100,000 for the forensic audit. So staff presented to you a deficit of $489,105. Proposed fees in the general fund, there are no fee increases in the general fund. The revenue impact was a millage increase of 4 mills at $320,000, and also utilizing the fund balance of $169,105 to balance the budget. The board had asked staff to come back with options. So the option that was chosen by the council was option 1, which is to add 3 firefighters, but to begin those positions on September 1st. 1 HR risk management position with a reduced salary to start October 1st, remove a public works employee, and to reduce their forensic audit from $100,000 to $75,000. You've got a reduction there of $178.23. The revenue increase is 4 mills at $320,000. Also to add a full-time mechanic with the Public Works Department. And this is not a part of the general fund. It's paid for out of the sanitation fund, so there's no impact and you have a balanced budget. So just moving forward, we've got, again, now here we are at June 13th. It is the second reading. And that's the proposed option that was chosen by.
Have any changes been made between the first and second reading that have been put in by the town? Or is this what we're bringing before and voting on tonight, the exact same thing that we did the first reading on and passed?
What you passed the first reading, it's just been put on into numbers.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, I just have a question. In early May, we heard from the peer committee that recommended the fishing fees be between $12 and $14. Excuse me. And if I recall correctly, before the pier was destroyed, our fishing fees were in the neighborhood of about $7. Excuse me. I know we have revenue forecasted in the pier fund for fishing fees. What did we assume the value of those fishing fees would be to develop that number?
I don't think I didn't even remember that we put fishing fees in. Once you took the admission out, I thought I took that out too. I don't know. I don't even have the answer to your question. It's probably about the same as wherever it was before, but we never knew when the pier was gonna open. So the whole pier probably needs to be looked at when we know when it's gonna open, what we're gonna do, who the tenants are gonna be. Because it's not accurate at this, for what we know. So I will say
For
that.
just the pier fund?
Yeah, it's just the pier fund. Because we haven't said anything in stone yet, so it's really not in there. It's just kind of all placeholders at this point.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else have any comment? Do we have a motion on the budget?
Well, Mr. Mayor, I would like to make another comment then. I've looked at several different ways of basically moving the P under the shell for this thing. And, you know, for over the past year, we have talked about having the American Rescue Funds available to pay for the pier. And I think one easy thing we can do on this pier to alleviate the need to have a property tax increase at this time is to assign $350,000 of the American Rescue Funds to the pier fund. This alleviates the need for $675,000 of the local A tax to be transferred to the pier fund. That can be reduced to $325,000. Transfer that local A tax funding of $350,000 into the general fund. That can offset the salary bump of what would have normally been resulting in the property tax increases. I think with the fact that the county is undertaking, you know, their own tax increases this year, as well as the property reassessments next year. If all of our properties are assessed higher than what they have been, the town will realize a net revenue increase next year anyway. So I've just not really been convinced that a property tax increase is really that necessary at this time, because we have funds available to support the completion of the pier. We have the funds available that can be allocated to pay down that debt service over the next several years until we have to pay off the bond on an early call. So I just don't feel that I've been convinced that a property tax increase is prudent at this time. And therefore, I will make a motion to accept second reading predicated upon that adjustment of transferring $350,000 out of local A tax into the general fund at this time, as well as allocating $350,000 of the American Rescue Funds to the pier fund.
Second.
Okay, my next question is to Diana. Did you understand exactly what she said? Do you agree or disagree with her being the finance director?
It's a scenario that I guess we can do. I mean, there's any reason why we can't do it. What will it leave us in local A tax? And we should be all right as long as the tourists come, I guess. I haven't really sat down, I didn't look at that per se, but I mean, it's an option. I mean, if that's what you want to do.
Well, and the argument was, once the pier is completed, the A tax revenue is available to offset the increase in salaries that we're seeing for our employees.
I think my
So-
only thing would be that the American Rescue money, I don't think should go for operations, but that's just my opinion of that money was given to all of the cities and towns to help them out. And it should be done something for the people, but that's just the way the original rules were written, and then it was open that you could throw it into the general pot. So they did change the rules in Washington, so I guess you have to go with that.
Offsetting delays in the pier project is benefit of the town, I would think.
I guess we can't say it's all paid for with tourist money.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
I thought this American Rescue money, this is my understanding of it, that we were kind of trying to put this aside because there are other projects in town that need to kind of be done, and we'd spend all that money on that. We need a new, as most people know, a new police department and a new courthouse, which is going to cost some money. And I thought that we basically was going to take that American Rescue money, instead of taking it and paying salaries for somebody, and build a new police department or, yes, ma'am, that's just exactly what you said.
Point of order.
Well, but anyway, back to my suggestion, is try to keep the American Rescue money to build these things that we're gonna have to have very soon. We're actually sitting in a courtroom right now that we shouldn't be in. Be honest with everybody in here. It is, this building's got mold and stuff in it right now. We shouldn't be holding meetings in here. We should be trying to get a new courtroom, new chambers. And the police department is busting at the seams. We don't have enough room to put the officers who come into town to work other events. We don't have the room. And I was assuming that since we had this $4 million that we had borrowed at 2% interest, that was going to be the money for the pier. And our finance director has told you that we have the money to make our pier payments. So why are we borrowing, taking money out of this fund and moving it into a general fund? Is my question.
Mr. Holder.
Well, I disagree with doing this move. I don't want to use the rescue funds for this purpose at this time. I don't think we need to. I think we can approve the budget like we had option one, and we can wait until September to decide if we can need a millage increase, even though we vote for it now. But we don't have to make a decision with the county about doing that increase now. And we can look and see what the budget, we have money coming in from the Life for All program sometime next year, beginning of next year. And there's several things happening. So I don't see a need to do this at all.
I don't have a whole lot to say, except for I am against raising our taxes unless somebody can really prove to me that they need to be raised, and I have yet to have it really proved to me. I think we can manage without. It looks to me like we're gonna have another good season. Maybe we won't, who knows? We could have a hurricane in the next 2 weeks and wipe everything out for the summer. But that being said, we'll get a lot of federal money again, probably. But I'm happy to vote for it without the tax increase. So.
Mr. Drake.
The tax increase, I'm absolutely against. I think that as a 1.9 miles town, I think we need to look at other alternatives. Alternative Ms. Keating brought up is a very good one. And I had mentioned one too, but didn't get any response from it. But I'll let it stay. And that's about all I can say about it, but I'm not for any tax increase.
Okay, I'll be the final person on it, but I've got a couple questions. One is, the things that were put on by Ms. Keating, did you guys know about this before? And have you done anything or investigated to see if it's all feasible and what was said? Because we have a motion to do this. I don't want to do it if it isn't doable. But if it is doable, then
We understood that there may be, option one may not be the selected option for this budget. So we did know there were some numbers going in this direction. So to me, it sounds like we're going to use ARP money to cover
The bond.
the pier expenses and then use the aid tax money from the pier to cover the deficit for the general fund. The numbers may be different than what Ms. Keating said, but I think we've got a general idea of what you want to do. So did we look at that completely? No, sir.
okay, and then the next question I have is that if we make the decision tonight not to raise the millage, right? Do we have the ability to still raise the millage this year if we find out that the other solution is not going to work right?
My understanding, Horry County needs the millage rate by mid-July.
By when?
Mid-July.
All right, so mid-July means that that's second reading, so we're looking at, it would be the next two meetings that we have to raise the millage, if we need to raise the millage. And the personal opinion of the two of you is that, does this need further review or is it doable? I mean, I know that anything's doable, but I can't see individual repercussions for what we do on this that could come about, and you guys have more knowledge of that.
I mean, you're not asking us to run the numbers now, come back.
No.
Okay.
But do you need to run the numbers on it before we do the actual vote on it? I'm just asking your personal opinion.
Well, all the numbers in the ordinance would need to change if you're gonna do that, so all the numbers that are here would be wrong. So this ordinance wouldn't be right unless we run the numbers through it.
So,
I think we need to run the numbers through it and come back next meeting and just, if that's the scenario.
so what you're saying is that, based on the motion that we have on the table right now, that is a significant change?
It would change the balance of the funds.
Is that a significant change? I don't know the definition of the significant change that you need in order to be able to make it the second reading or not the second reading.
Can I provide a clarification? I mean, currently, right now, the local aid tax fund transfers $675,000 to the pier fund. All I'm saying is of that 675, put 350 in the general fund, put 325 in the pier fund, so that fund remains the same. Take 350 out of the American Rescue funds that are held in the capital project fund and transfer that to the pier fund. So really, the only fund balance that changes is capital projects.
I would guess that's right now that you say that.
And your bottom line number is not going to change. You're just moving the shelter.
Okay, and then the next question is, if for some reason we do the final reading on this tonight and there is a problem with it, we still can go anytime in our budget system and change it. The only thing that we may not be able to change if we don't do it in a timely manner is the millage rate. Is that correct?
That's correct. By statute, you need a balanced budget by June 30th.
Okay. Is there any other comments?
Well, Mr. Mayor, I feel with this change that you're talking about, it's significant. And that should not be the first, we shouldn't be the second reading. It should be a first reading. So next time we come back and it to be a second reading.
Mr. Mayor, I've got a comment too. Instead of transferring all this money around, not nothing against you, Chief Lemons, why can't we go back and cut the fire department down to one person? Hire the other two in now and get the budget balanced as what it should be, instead of transferring money from this fund to this fund to this fund and making a whole lot of mess out of it. We can always come back in September, October, and visit this again if we've got the money to hire another fireman at that point in time. Why do we have to get into transferring money around again to balance the budget? We're just moving money to pay somebody now that's gonna come up later in life. I just don't understand why we can't just put off hiring one or two people at this time and get a balanced budget and move on instead of complicating it.
Okay. My next question is based on what you just said, that this be the first reading. Do you want to make an amendment to it in case the other failed?
I would like, yes, I'd like to make the amendment that this will be a first reading, that would use American Rescue Fund and using other tax funds instead of second reading.
Do I have a second on that?
Second.
Okay. Based on that, let's go for the vote. Sherry?
Well, Mr. Mayor,
They restate.
I mean,
Yeah.
by ordinance, what our ordinance says is if there is a significant change made between the first and second reading, that we would have to revisit first reading. This is not really a significant change because the bottom line of the budget stays the same. I mean, you know, it's like I said, we're just moving the P under the shells a little bit, but net effect is the same. You know, as I said, the transfer out of the local aid tax money remains the same. It's just a matter, you know, is it really considered significant to go back to a first reading to say that instead of $320,000 coming in from a tax increase, we're going to use $350,000, or it can be $320,000 out of the American Rescue Fund. You know, it's just a different source of that revenue, but the values are not changing. So I really don't agree that that's a significant change, since the bottom line of the budget still remains about $17.1 million.
Mr. Mayor, to that, who is to decide whether it's a significant change or not? Is it council, or is it these people say attorney?
No, it's our town attorney. Welcome to the club.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Like a lot of legal answers, I don't know if there is clear on our ordinance, doesn't outline what exactly significant change is. I agree with Ms. Keating, except the only thing that would cause me some concern is when you start changing how something is funded. In other words, the proposal deals with additional funding through millage increases as property tax. Now, under the proposed proposal, we're getting the funding through some of these various funds that have been set up to pass. I hear you. The one argument would be that, well, the net numbers are the same, so there really is no change. But I think a very good argument to be made that particularly when you're talking about a totally different revenue stream, to come up with the numbers which do trigger a substantial change. Like I said, it's not one that's real clear either way. The conservative way to go would be to treat it as a significant change, given that you're going from millage increases to other funds that are available. But like I said, I can't point to anything that says that is exactly the way to determine it, but I think it's certainly a very good argument to be made that for purposes of the public being put on notice, at least in theory, the public was put on notice that this was going to be achieved by virtue of a millage increase. Now we're changing that from a millage increase to using one of the other funds. That that the public should be given notice of that prior to the vote. So I guess the best advice I could give on it is that probably the conservative way to look at it would be to treat it as a substantial change. I'm happy to answer any questions about it.
And then Sherry, that would be the addendum, the amendment comes first and then the
Yes.
other?
Restate it.
Yeah, to restate, the amended motion would propose passing first reading of the budget with the changes of the American Rescue Fund revenue being transferred to the pier fund, the local aid tax revenue identified, transferred to the pier fund, and 350 transferred to the general fund, and no tax millage increase. So in option 1A.
You got that, Sherry? I see you right.
I'm writing.
Take your time.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Mr. Drake,
Yes.
Mr. Holder,
No,
Mrs. Keating,
Yes.
Mr. Crepwell,
Yes.
Mr. Stamey,
No,
Mayor Hallier.
Yes. Okay, the next thing on the agenda is the peer committee recommendations. And I have a copy of that. Give me just 1 second. All right, at the last meeting, the peer committee gave 3 recommendations. One is about the operating hours. The second one is about the fishing fees. And the third is about what type of business should be in Building D. All right, so we'll go over each one of these individually. And the first one is the operating hours. And their recommendation is for 2023, the operating hours be from 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. In 2024, the operating hours of 7 a.m. through 11 p.m. October through March, and 6 a.m. to 1 a.m. April through September. And they'll revisit overnight fishing options for the 2024 season. Okay, do I have a motion for that?
Mr. Mayor, on May 9th, this council met and a motion passed to accept operating hours of 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. for the 2023 season.
Okay. Do you want to make a motion just for the 2023, or we've already done it?
We've already done it. We've already accepted that recommendation. We said we'd visit 2024 prior to the season,
And that was on May 13th?
May 9th.
May 9th. Does anybody else have any comments on that? All right, number 2 is the fishing fees, and they said standard fishing is $12 daily with $45 weekly and $150 yearly. King fishing is $14 a day, $65 weekly, and $200 yearly. And it was proposed a 50% discount for full-time residents, veterans, first responders, guests with autism, and children under 12.
Mr. Mayor, again, on May 9th, we discussed this. We did not make a motion to accept the dollar values of the fishing fees. We did talk about the logistics of providing a discount to selected patrons. There was a counter proposal that children under 12 be offered or be allowed to fish for free, since they would most likely be attended by a paying adult. So with the completion of the Perry Bait and Tackle lease, I think during May 9th, we were unclear as to who was actually going to be collecting fishing fees and what the logistics of verifying who's entitled to a discount. You know, we say full-time residents, but what about property owners that pay 3 times the taxes that may just be here to visit for a weekend? You know, they should be entitled to that same discount for paying their property taxes as well. You know, veterans, first responders, you know, I assume they may be carrying some kind of identification or certification in their wallets with them, I assume. You know, guests with autism, I don't know how you prove that, but, you know, this is something I think we need to discuss with, if Perry's is going to be given this obligation to collect these fees, I think this is something that we need to discuss with them and what they propose, how they would do it. Is it reasonable? Is it another labor intensive thing, you know, and really identify the logistics of how we achieve that proposal. And I think that was the crux of the discussion we had. I don't recall there was any real objection to the fishing fees as long as they were consistent with what our neighboring peers are charging. But it was just a matter of the logistics of offering a discount structure.
On that said, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that we accept the standard fishing daily, weekly, yearly fees, kingfishing, weekly fishing and all, and take out the 50% discount to everybody, just leave it at that for right now. Then that way there won't be no discussion of who gets in free and who don't, or who fishes free and who don't fish free. So I make a motion that that's what we do.
So I have a second on
I
that.
got a second.
Okay,
Mr. Mayor,
yes.
I'd like to go along with what Mr. Stamey said, but I would like to include the children under 12 with a paying adult.
Right.
I agree that that should happen, but
Well, I'll make amendment to my motion. That's fine, y'all. I will make an amendment to accept children under 12 with the paying adult.
Okay, discussion?
Yes.
No,
Oh,
not
this
your vote.
year?
I'm just asking for
No, I'm
discussion.
fine, I'm fine with that.
Ms. Keating?
I'm fine with that.
Okay. So Carrie, let's go on the vote on the fishing fees.
And this is just to accept the fishing fees?
This is to accept the
No.
standard fishing fee of $12 daily, $45 weekly, and $150 yearly. Kingfishing at $14 daily, $65 weekly, and $200 yearly. And also the children under 12 can fish for free.
Thank you.
With the paying
With the
adult.
paying
Paying
adult.
adult.
Just to let y'all know, Garden City doesn't charge if an adult's with the children. They don't charge. I was just there last weekend.
Well, we're not, this amendment for the same thing. They're not gonna charge
Okay,
either.
but you're saying an adult had to fish, paying to fish. I think if you take a child fishing, they ought to be able to fish. Whether an adult's paying, adult fishing.
I like to leave it like it is, Mr. Mayor.
So I don't understand what you're saying.
I took 2 kids fishing. I
Right?
didn't fish. I helped the girls put the bait on the hook, put it out there for them. They had a blast. But they didn't charge me to fish. I just had to pay the half rate. It was only $6 a piece.
Yeah, well, the amendments for, the motion on the table is with a paying adult.
Yeah.
Does anybody else have any discussion before we vote on it?
Mr. Drake,
Yes.
Mr. Holder,
Yes.
Mrs. Keating,
Yes,
Mr. Crickwell,
yes,
Mr. Stamey,
Yes,
Mayor Hellier.
Yes. And the third recommendation from the peer committee is to only select a food and beverage establishment for building D. Now, I know that the RFP is going out, or it went out today. Can you enlighten us on the qualifications for the RFP? Did it say anything about you know, who we want as a tenant, or did it give any preference to anything, or?
No, sir. It did not. It was just a blanket RFP for the space. It just described the space and the time frame for the RFP.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, again, the discussion we had on May 9th when this was originally proposed was that, you know, we instructed the administrator to reissue the RFP to see what additional interest we would get in that space. And we acknowledged that, yes, the town stands to gain more revenue from a food and beverage service tenant than some others, just due to the higher tax structure within Horry County. But that was kind of out of our control until we receive the responses to the RFP. Now, fortunately for us, you know, rumor has it the 3 people that are interested are actually hoping to propose a food and beverage solution. So, you know, there's really nothing we can do until we get the results of the RFP process completed.
Well, our RFP is already out, but, you know, I'll ask the town attorney too. Can you make a recommendation for when we put out the RFP for somebody on the pier, can we tell them that it's limited to food and beverage? I mean, that's sort of eliminating a whole bunch of people. And can we do that?
I don't, if council makes the decision that it wants that space to be occupied by food and beverage establishment, then, yeah, I don't see any problem with putting the RFP out with those parameters. That's the use of the town council.
Now, like I said, the RFP went out today, so it's already out there. So my question is that, let's say that I have 10 people that apply for the space on the pier, okay? And 3 of them are food and beverage, and the other, you know, aren't. Is it, I won't say legal, but is it proper for me to eliminate that when it wasn't in the RFP?
I think the proper way to do it would be to draw that RFP, submit a new RFP with the parameters that you're seeking to have, which is based on the council, or which is based on the food bev guidelines, and then accept with one of those and submit for that purpose.
Mr. Mayor, you got the people that have a restaurant also have T-shirts and hats that say the name of the restaurant. They sell those items. You're eliminating them by doing this from selling those items.
Are you saying that they serve food too?
No, I'm saying if you have somebody serving food and beverage only, is what they can sell.
No, I don't think the recommendation is it's food and beverage only. I think the recommendation is that somebody does have food and beverage so that people that go on the pier can get some refreshments without going into the diner and having to sit down and do whatever.
All right, I just want to make sure
It's
that,
for walkable food and beverage.
right, whatever they're gonna sell, they need to be able to sell their product. And if their name's on the product, it's their name of their store.
Okay, based on what we heard, do we have any,
Mr. Mayor, before we make that recommendation, as you know, and the council knows, the peer committee did put out a survey, and one of the top things that done by the town who's here was they wanted food and beverages out there on the pier instead of a T-shirt store or flag store, whatever it happens to be. So I would thinking about what the people of the town has asked for too, when we make this recommendation for food and beverages for that building.
okay, then,
So I'm gonna make a motion that we withdraw the one that we just put out and go back and write in here that we would prefer food and beverages, or have food and beverages in that building. Just on what our surveys has showed.
okay, is, Sherry, you put it out, I mean, what's it take to pull it back?
Just take it off the website, but if
Publish
I
in
may I
newspapers.
speak?
Sure. Go ahead.
The last time we did it, the only people, and it's not saying that it's gonna go that same way this time, but the last time it was just a souvenir shop that put in for it. Am I not correct?
No.
Or,
No, the-
or showed an
No.
interest?
The only,
Put in
the,
for- Zach put in.
Zach put it right there.
the only interest that I dealt with it, when I became the interim, it was when the RFP closed, at that particular time, it was just one business that put in for it. And I know Ms. Keating Zach had put in for it. And we did have some discussion, just so council knows, about this RFP. We thought certainly council can change it, but we thought by the very nature of an RFP, you put the RFP out, you let businesses submit the RFP, and then council decides what's going to go in there regardless of how you frame the RFP. You can frame it and say, we only want this. You can certainly do that, or leave it open, let people put in for it. And I know what the peer committee recommended, and they did recommend a business, then council chooses. That's why we didn't put the parameters on it. And it can be pulled back, but there's a process to be able to do that, but.
It just says whatever would suit the town.
Yeah, that's all it says, is whatever business the town, to Jared's point.
Point of clarity, that yes, if the issue is that we're going to receive a number of requests from a more broad RFP, and when they come in, council can evaluate at that time, based on prior recommendations or whatever, whether or not you ultimately decide whether or not you want a restaurant or whatever the case may be, then there's no need, I don't think, to change the RFP. What I was understanding was that we were making the decision at this point to categorically exclude everything except for a restaurant, in which case, then that probably needs to be noticed to the public. However, if it's not a categorical determination at this point in time, just sort of a general understanding that we've had this recommendation from the peer committee, we'd like to see it, we're going to see what bids actually come in, and then at that time, if you are still leaning towards the food and bev, and that is the best proposal that you ultimately get, then if that's the position of council, then yeah, I think we can keep the same RFP that's out there and just wait and evaluate what comes in at that time to determine whether this food and bev proposal, which we are leaning towards because of the recommendation of the peer committee, or some other proposal that maybe wasn't contemplated, you can evaluate it at that time and make your decision.
Okay. I would like to make a motion, and the motion.
We have a motion on the table.
What's the motion on the table?
I
Mr.
made a
Stamey wants to repeal one.
I made the motion to only allow that, but I'll withdraw my motion.
Okay.
And Mr. Mayor, I'd like to add a little bit to this, if I could. I think we all agree with the peer committee that we would like to have a food and beverage establishment up there. It would give the town more money rather than selling just souvenirs or whatever. And I think that by changing the RFP at this point in time would not be a good thing. I think we just leave it out there and we decide what we want. And I have not read this RFP, but most of them usually say we can reject any or all proposals. So if we don't get any restaurants and that's what we really want, we just reject them all and put it back out asking for only restaurants. That's my opinion.
Yes, Mayor, can I answer that question? That's great and dandy, as long as they'll come and ask us before they make the decision. Sometimes that decision gets made before it gets to council. Remember that.
Well, council needs to make any decision like we do on the peer leases. But the bottom line is I'd like to make a motion, and the motion is that we leave the RFP out like it is. We accept the people that do it, and that when it comes to council's adjustment or the final award of it, that we take into consideration, like the peer committee recommended, that we give favoritism, we give preference to someone who has food and beverage.
Second.
Mr. Mayor, we don't need to make a motion to take no action. the RFP's out, it will stand until we get responses.
Okay. So it doesn't have a second, we're done there. And the next thing on the agenda is public comments. And the public comments are about town services. And we have them now, and everybody has 5 minutes.
Harry Coleman, 10th Avenue North. I'd like to speak about the event we have every Monday during the summer. Starts at 7, ends at 8. First want to say that I think it's a great event. It's enjoyed by residents, so-called locals, and tourists. And believe it or not, 10, 12 years ago, when I was on the Recreation Committee, the luau/hula dances was my idea. Unfortunately, the pier parking lot is not available anymore. And even when the pier opens, because of the new restaurants, the parking is at a very minimum there now. 2 weeks ago, somebody on Facebook wrote there were hundreds of tickets written. Well, there was 12, I believe. I was down there last night. I saw one ticket being written, and it was right over where it says do not park on the street. I don't feel sorry for a person who parks over a no parking sign. Now, the people who live in the area have a little bit of a problem with it. The tourists who come here anticipating, you tell your kid all day long, we're going to the hula dance. I was there at 6 o'clock. About 6:15, I don't think there was more than 1 or 2 spaces to be had. So my point is, the tourists go there, it's a free thing, that's why we wanted it. It's something free. You come here, you spend a lot of money, and then the town's gonna give you back something, a hula dance. And if you've never been to it, please go to it. It's fantastic. It is packed. The only problem is now you told your kid you're going to a hula dance, you got no place to park. So I know some of you don't think I have any ideas, but this is my idea. Put it on either 3rd or 4th Avenue South. You put it there, you have parking on 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th. On 5th Avenue, you have a bathroom. On 3rd Avenue, you have a handicap ramp. On 4th Avenue, you have a ramp that goes over onto the beach for police or fire department, just in case anything happens and they can get right to people. If it gets so crowded, they can park by the ball field. Now, I mentioned this to one of the town employees last night, and they said, I said, why do you have it here? Well, the girls want it at 3rd North. I was like, the girls? What girls? Oh, the hula dances. Well, that's very nice that the hula dancers would like to do it on 3rd North, but it doesn't work. People are getting a bad taste. I love this town. People, the haters in this area about this town, and you're just feeding more ammunition. Have an event where you can't park, you can't go to it. Doesn't make sense. And I believe we used to pay the hula dancers. So if we're paying them, and they're not doing it out of the kindness of their heart, then maybe they should go down to 3rd or 4th or 5th on the south side. I mean, you don't want to lose tourists. You don't want them to come here and then you have an event and then you give them a ticket. It doesn't make sense. And if you're going to keep it on 3rd, then post signs telling people where they can't park. Someone comes here for a week, There's no way in the world they're gonna know you can't park 10 feet from a driveway. You can't park with your wheels on the side, on the pavement. Because everyone parks their cars everywhere else in the world on the pavement. So please think about this. People have to think out of the box. You have staff. The staff should be thinking about this stuff. Thank you.
Robert Kraus, 4th Avenue North, and also Peer Committee Chairman. I'm glad you guys took no action. Our recommendation was not only food and beverage. We strongly recommended, due to the survey results, the location of that building on the end of the pier, and the advantageous situation with hospitality tax, that it should be given consideration, special consideration, I guess, food and beverage. That's all we ever said. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Diana Taylor, 7th Avenue North. I have lived in Surfside since 1986, and I just wanted to take the time to say what a positive breath of fresh air Tabitha Mall brings to our town. We are lucky to have her. You picked a winner. Thank you.
Are there any other public comments? All right, from now, we're gonna have town council comments because we probably are gonna be going into executive session. So I'll start out with, we'll mix it around tonight. Mr. Kreckloff.
Well, thanks to all that came out, the ones listening. I don't have a lot to say. I guess I hardly ever do, but the budget, I don't know if it was a substantial change or not. I guess it doesn't matter as long as we try to get something passed before July 1, when we're required to have a balanced budget. With that said, good night and see you next time.
Mr. Drake.
I'd like to thank everybody for coming out tonight and tuning in, and thanks everybody for coming to the council meeting here in the chamber tonight. On the budget, again, I see no sense in us raising taxes on everybody, just to raise them. The funds can be paid other directions, and I'm glad to see that council's looking at that now. And I'd like to thank the hula dancers for what they do. They go out there and do a good show. It is mayhem on 3rd Avenue North. And I think that our department heads need to come together and see about putting it somewhere where it's more parking available. It would be a very good help. So, but to down them on what they do and down them on people parking, it's a parking and no parking place in a no parking place. That's simple. If you park the wrong direction or on the street corner or blocking somewhere, Kenny's got to do what he's got to do. So, but I think y'all can all come together as staff and resolve that problem pretty quickly. But thank you very much.
Mr. Stanley.
Thanks for everybody coming. I'm gonna make a comment on this budget. I'm for a tax millage increase in town for the simple reason, everything else is going up. We need a way to pay for it. Everybody seems to think that a tax will be the cure for all, but it ain't. As everybody knows, it goes out to eat or goes to buy us gas, things cost more. And this town ain't received a tax increase in a good while. I live here, I pay the tax just like everybody else. But I do think they needed it. I thought they needed it last year, and we went through it. Is if we don't increase it this year, we definitely ain't gonna increase it next year. So you're gonna get 2 years, it's no increase. But believe me, it's coming sooner or later to make this town work and keep the things that all of us love here. You're gonna have to pay more to do it. And it's gonna come with a tax increase sooner or later. For saying that, thanks for coming.
Ms. Keating.
Yeah, I want to thank everybody for coming, especially the fire department that's out here in force and supporting their fellow officers. And I commend the officers that did respond and put their training to the best practical use and got one of our residents back home safely and quickly. I appreciate everything you guys do. Thank you very much. As I've said many times over the past several months, we seem to fly fast and loose with a lot of our own rules and so forth. And I had a local resident call me this afternoon he was fairly angry and, he didn't say he was the recipient of a ticket, but a truck got a ticket because they were within 15, 20 feet of the intersection. And I told him you can't park within 30 feet of an intersection. That's pretty much common knowledge everywhere. We've got nice yellow paint on most intersections down around the E district. Illegal parking's illegal parking. And I am never, ever going to chastise an officer or our parking contractor for enforcing the law. Sorry. That's, all there is to it. He was not real happy by the time he hung up the phone, but within about 5 minutes, I got a text message from him telling him that he apologized for being rude and that I was right and he understood. So, I think, and as a result, I did reach out to John Adair and said, well, maybe, the yellow lines at our intersections need to be beefed up a little bit. Maybe they need to be repainted. Maybe we put a sign that says, no parking from here to the corner or something. Ignorance is law is no excuse. But at the same time, if we have some inexpensive ways to communicate the laws, then, I think it's worth our time in doing so. So, fortunately, our public works director has embraced that with our parking contractor, and they're willing to remediate some of those situations in those areas. Just like Mr. Coleman's suggestion that, let's have these events where there's a little bit more parking close to where the center of the event is going to be. That's a valid point. That's something that we should certainly be taking into consideration. Unfortunately, we only have so much parking. It is what it is. We can't create more land. We can go up if, y'all want, 10, 12, 15, 50 mil increases because parking garages are expensive. They're between $20,000 and $50,000 a parking space. I really don't see that ever coming to Surfside. So, parking is always a hot issue. The budget is always a hot issue. I think if we get creative and we start looking at really what is our best options on what we can do with the money we have available. We keep talking about expanding the police department and recreating a municipal complex. And, we already beat that horse 2 years ago. We had a plan, and for whatever reason, it was never implemented. To go back and reinvent that wheel is not fiscally prudent either. So I think, as I said, during the meeting, I have not been convinced that this is the time we need a property tax increase, because I think with the availability of other revenue we have realized over the past couple of years, I think it's not necessary this year. So with that, again, everyone stay safe, stay healthy. Thanks for all your comments and your feedback, and those that reach out via emails and phone calls. I appreciate everybody's opinions and perspectives. So have a good night, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Mr. Holder.
I'd like to thank everybody for coming out tonight. I'd just like to thank Mr. Clemens for his comments about the fire department. Excuse me. But we have paramedics on every shift on our fire trucks. I fell up in Rehoboth Beach, Delaware. And you would think up there the population is so much greater. They do not have paramedics on their fire trucks. It took me, when I fell, over 4.5 hours to get any kind of drugs or anything with 2 broken shoulders. So there's such a difference in what we are offering our citizens as a town, what we get right here, than what other towns are doing. And I just think, I want to thank Mr. Clemens, I want to thank Surfside, and I really appreciate living in a place that cares about how good we take care of the people that live here. So with that, thank you.
Well, I also want to thank the fire department for all they do and the police department for all they do. And Jerry, you've done a remarkable job in the last week. I know that everybody's been pounding you know, on stuff to go, and you still got the budget to get done, but we appreciate all you do too. So with that, I don't know why the hula show, other than somebody said that they just wanted to move it, but it's always been on Third North or South.
Yeah.
And it was on Third South last year because they used to have a Don's John there. And we put that Don's John there for the hula show. And after the hula show, we used to lock it so that you couldn't use it. And all the beachgoers during the week would sit there and see the Don's John come off of the beach to go use it, and it was always locked. So I remember it being there, and I remember going to the hula show on Third South. So I don't know what the thing is, but I think that we ought to take a look at that, and we'll talk to Tabitha about it. You know, see if we can't move it back there, because there is definitely more parking at that place than there is the other. So with that, I thank everybody for coming tonight. We still got work to do on the budget, and we're going to get it done at the second reading at the next meeting. And hopefully it'll be time to meet the time restraints that we need. And with that, I need a motion to go into executive session.
Mr. Mayor, I make the motion to enter executive session in accordance with the Freedom of Information Act, Section 30-470A1, for discussion of employment and appointments, particularly relating to the position of communications coordinator. Also, Section 30-470A2, for discussion of potential negotiations for contract arrangements specific to Feral Insights.
Do I have a second on that?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, this meeting is adjourned. We're now going into executive session.